Hey guys, it's Tuesday, February 2nd, and I'm excited about this new week. Who knows what God has for us, right? We'll keep trusting Him and following Him. And we know that He's with us. And sometimes it's real obvious that He's with us, and sometimes it's less obvious. We can feel very alone. We can feel like we wonder where God is. I'm sure you've heard the footprints poem about God carrying us when we don't see, when there's only one set of footprints. But you know, it can feel in the midst of it, it can feel really hard and really difficult to know that we're always loved, that God is always there for us, that He's always thinking about us, always caring for us. Today, I want to talk with Tamara Mitchell. She goes to our church, been coming for just over a year or so, and God's been has done great things in her life, and met with her and cared for her in the midst of some of the darkest periods of her life. And she has so graciously offered to share her story with us today. So I just want you to sit back and give a listen as Tamara talks about God's faithfulness in her life. Let's go to Tamara now. Hey, Tamara, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Tim?
I'm good. So glad we get to do this together. Thank you so much for taking time to be on ACC today with me. This is great.
My pleasure. Happy to be here, guys.
Now, we were talking a while back. We were talking a little bit about your story, about how you came to know Jesus, about how He's been with you through good times and bad times. But before we jump into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Are you married? Do you have kids? Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yes, I am married to Devin Mitchell. We moved here in 2019 when we started coming to ACC. And it's wonderfully been our home since.
Nice.
Devin works up at the Timber Incline combo with Central Alberta Youth Unlimited, or otherwise known as Youth for Christ. And he works with youth up there. So we're super blessed by that experience. It's just brought a lot of really great community for us. And we are blessed to have two wonderful sons. So Oliver is 4, and he is loud and full of life and vibrant. And Hunter is my 8-year-old, and he's a little bit more quiet and shy, but he feels big and loves big. And yeah, we're super blessed by them. And I love being a mom, and I think that it's a wonderful way that the Lord has taught me and ministered to me, in fact, over the years.
Oh, that's so good. And we love having you guys at the church. What a blessing you've been to us, to me personally. I know to others in the church, both of you are real and genuine. And we love that we can do life together. So
Yes.
Thanks for being a part of ACC.
Yeah, totally. We love it. We're blessed by you guys.
So tell me your story. I mean, people talk about their relationship with Jesus, and they have this idea that, people say, oh, well, the reason you love God is because everything's worked out so lovely in your life, or something like that. Or we say when things don't work out, that God was absent in our lives. But you have a different perspective on that. So tell us some of your story and how you've experienced God in the midst of it all.
Yeah, love to. Yeah, for sure. I would say you do hear that commonly, but I would say, yeah, I do have a different view of that. I have always known God, really blessed to know God from a young girl. However, it wasn't sort of like I guess maybe the Disneyland version of faith that we'd all hope for people and even for ourselves and our kids. But my parents did bring God into my life, but I never really saw it lived out in the home. In fact, in the home, it was kind of quite the opposite. There was domestic violence in the home, alcoholism, a lot of disarray and dysfunction. And I grew up really poor. I grew up without lights, power, water, or heat. I had a potbelly stove. I did my homework by lantern. And so I grew up in a very different way that I guess we kind of think when you're growing up in a Christian home and what it should look like, but I knew God all along. I knew even as a little girl in all of that dysfunction, that God loved me and that God was there. And that even as a little girl, I look back now as an adult And I can see all the ways that God was there. See, look at me. I was there in that teacher who cared for you. See, look at me. I was there when you needed your first bike and someone just bought it for me. And see, I was there at your grade 8 grad when somebody donated a dress for me to wear and paid for me to get my hair done. And see, I was there in high school when you were experiencing all that loneliness, and this wonderful mentor walked into my life and just genuinely cared and called me up to hang out with me. And for me, that was a big deal because I didn't feel like much of anybody. And so to feel like somebody actually wanted, to genuinely just spend time with me, just to have me over at their house. And so childhood was hard, but I can look back and see, and even knew in those moments that I wasn't alone, and that God was there, and that even in all of that, and even in all my insecurity, that I was still loved. And so you'd think, knowing all that life maybe would have taken a different turn, but my teenage years and sort of early adult years didn't really get any easier. I experienced some times of homelessness, and I was really just surrounded with a lot of people who had a lot of brokenness in their life. And praise the Lord, but he just stepped in so many ways. I remember my first apartment when I had saved up money after not having a home, saved up all my paychecks. And I just remember a woman who just knocked on my door, and having all I had was a backpack and a sheet. And I remember she said, are you Tamara Hebert? And I said, yeah, I am. And we're from the Red Deer Women's Society, and we want to fill your apartment. And so everything I owned in my entire life, minus that backpack and that sheep, every cup, every toiletry, my bed, my blankets, my pillows, my couch, pictures on my wall, everything I owned until I actually met my first husband was donated by the Women's Society in Red Deer. And I had a pastor who followed me there, who relentlessly, whether I was at a friend's house or just wandering the streets, picked me up. Every Sunday he would find me wherever. He would leave early enough before church, and him and his wife would pick me up. His name was Steve, and I met him at the upper level, where I sort of rededicated my life as a troubled teenager. And I just look back on those moments, and through all those people and all those circumstances, I just see all the times where I could have taken wrong turns. I could have turned to alcohol or drugs or so many really scary paths. And I just didn't, because I just always felt God. And I just always had these people that in my lowliest places where I felt like, who would want to hang out with me? Why would anyone like me? All these people, these really great, kind-hearted people that just genuinely loved me without any boundary. Like, they just had no expectation. And it was just so foreign to me. It just felt so authentic. And when I looked at them, I saw and imagined that must be what Christ's love is. That just this boundless love that just loves through it all, loves despite, loves even if. And so I felt like a lot of my life was sort of in those even if moments. And God just taught me through many humbling moments that, like, now I look back and I'm like, oh man, God, I felt so scared and so alone in so many of those moments, but I can see now all the ways that you didn't abandon me, and that you were there, and that your love was faithful, and that you were speaking life and hope into circumstances that for me felt really hopeless.
So what would you say to a young woman who is feeling alone, feeling definitely the pressure of addiction, and what would you say to them about what God's thinking about them?
Oh, that you are so loved and so valued, and that you are seen, that you are not alone, and that God has never been alone, and that he has so much more for you. I firmly believed then, as I do now, that wherever Christ is, there is hope. That his presence alone brings light to places that can only be lit by him. And that there is no darkness that can't be lit by him. So there is no problem that you're in that he can't light the way.
Yeah. Boy, that's a good word. It's a good word. So I interrupted you. So keep going.
Yeah. So I got married in my early 20s, still kind of, thinking maybe marriage would be different. And I had kind of had this image, that I got from youth group in Dalmeny, Saskatchewan. We used to pray for our husbands, for our future husbands. And as a teenager, that felt a bit weird for me, but I did it. And so I really had an image in my head of, this real fairy tale. And I'm also, if you know me, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm a very compassionate person, a very loving person. But so I had this real fairy tale in my mind about what it was going to be. And so, yeah, I entered into marriage, and really, really sadly, my husband became addicted 6 months actually after we got married. And it was a really hard time, because I remembered I was really just trying to still live out that idea, or at least I wanted people to believe from the outside that I had the fairy tale marriage that in my heart I believed God had for me. And so even though I knew from the inside that I wasn't living it out and that my marriage didn't look like that, because on the inside I was crying and I was lonely and I was praying desperately for the Lord to heal my marriage and to heal my husband of his addiction. But it didn't happen. And so it was really hard, because I kind of self-isolated. I disconnected myself from the church community that I was a part of. And so I missed out on a lot of what God had for me, and a lot of what I had to offer people to in community. But I was really scared to not be okay, to go to church alone, and to I didn't want to lie to people, and I knew if people saw me, they would ask if I was okay, and if they asked if I was okay, I didn't want to have to lie to them and tell them that I wasn't okay. And so it was really hard, because I not only felt like I didn't get the marriage I thought, but the man I loved was slowly slipping away. And I really missed my church community. That was always something that was just really special to my heart. And I really valued the connections and the people that I had there. But again, like God, I look back and I see people, pastors and friends that just saw me, even without me reaching out, and even without me actually sharing, like they knew that it wasn't okay, and they knew that Michael wasn't okay. And so just of their own instinct, I just had really beautiful people sort of walk alongside me in that hard time and come alongside me, and never with any judgment. And so I think in those moments I thought, well, like, I judge myself this way, I'm really sad and ashamed about how the inside of my life looks, so other people must think that. But it actually was the opposite. Every single time that I interacted with people, I got compassion and love and grace and understanding. And so I look back and see, like, that was Jesus saying, like, I know things don't look the way that you think that they should be, and you feel like I'm not answering your prayers, but I'm here. I'm here with you in it, and I weep with you. And that was big. And then my husband tragically took his own life eventually. That's what it led to. And I had a 4-month-old baby, and Oliver was 4 months old, and Hunter was 4 years old. And that was a really hard time. I had nothing, because I was kind of just a stay-at-home mom for the most part. And because of his addiction, we had nothing left. So I actually ended up finding shelter in a women's shelter. It was a really big piece of humble pie for me, because I was already kind of scrambling to keep my life sort of a secret, because I didn't want people to know what was going on and that he was super sick. And living in a women's shelter, you can't hide that. So
Yeah.
you can't hide that from people.
You feel God's presence there too?
Huge. Yeah, I would say this was hard for me to say for a long time, but I feel like I actually started living there.
Wow.
The Lord, like, I feel like that's in a place of great humility, in a place where I had nothing, no money. There was no money left to Michael, and so no money left to me. In a place where I had nothing, I felt empty, emotionally empty. It had been 12 years of really hard, and out of those ashes, God breathed beauty back into my life. And so he cared for me and the boys in really supernatural and miraculous ways, because I moved to a city where I didn't know anybody. So I couldn't reach out to anyone that I knew in my community for emotional support or financial support. But it was really miraculous to see how he cared for us.
So now, you're in a different place than you were when you're living in that shelter. You're married again, and you're here in Sylvan, and your heart, what Christ has done in your heart, has motivating you to be the kind of person that reached out to you in your dark times. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, 110%. I would say that the Lord has definitely set that on my heart, and I've been, for a long time, I've always wanted to give back in that way, to be able to give back to women in similar circumstances, and just for them to experience the hope of Christ, because I knew it was so real in my life. And if other women could experience Jesus in the way that I did, I know that their life could also look differently, that they would know, for them to know that, like, God has more. This isn't it. For them to know the hope of the Lord, that, like, where they are now isn't all that there is, that God has more for them.
Yeah. And so this is turning into something like actually a very a real defined role in your life. So what is it that you're sort of thinking of stepping into?
Yeah, so I've recently been hired on as kind of a local missionary with Youth for Christ, or Central Alberta Youth Unlimited, to sort of pioneer their Stepping Stones program here in Sylvan Lake. And Stepping Stones works with pregnant and or young mothers, basically, or young families who are struggling and most likely marginalized. It's kind of a peer-to-peer support, sort of mentoring them, creating opportunities and developing, like, skills, offering one-to-one support for them, and hope, and doing life with them, alongside them.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think of our vision statement, our mission statement, that it is, that we are constantly reaching out to those in need. That this is just the heartbeat of who we are, and you are representing ACC so well, in just the desire of your heart to serve God for these women, like you say, who may be marginalized, who may be down on their luck, and still having to be moms and raise children, and how difficult that is. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for being a part of ACC and obeying God's call in your life. Now, I know that you have to raise your own support. You need to raise somewhere around $2,000 a month. And I would love it for anybody watching this, if they would want to come alongside and partner with you, that would be a great opportunity. And they can do that by following this link right here. And that's below us, and they can just check in on that. And then they can find you and support you and be a part of being a blessing in this town, of reaching out to a person just like you, so that maybe this woman that we reach out to now in 5 years or so can do a video just like this with some other pastor and talk
Wow.
about how God used, people like us to bless in that place. So that's
Yes.
that's really great, Tamara.
Thank you. Yeah, it is exciting. I think it's exciting to locally be able to actually functionally be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think 1,010% that the things we do now we might not see the reward now, but I think for sure that that will be carried on in 5-10 years from now, when someone else looks back and they can point to all the places where Jesus intervened in their life to call them back home.
That's so good. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Little Oliver's been so patient and giving us his time to talk. So give him an extra big scrunch for all of us. And
Yes.
and God bless you, Tamara.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope that was encouraging to you as you listen to her story. We all have a race to run. Hebrews talks about, let's run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Everybody's race looks different. Tamara's race looks different than my race. Tamara's not running my race. I'm not running her race. We're running the race that God marked out for us. And it can be difficult. That's why he says, let us run with perseverance, because at times our race can be very, very difficult. But also remember that we are not alone. We are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses who are cheering us on. We are filled with the Holy Spirit. The Spirit of Jesus is in our hearts, the Spirit who cries out, Abba, Father. And we are children of God. So you're not alone, whatever you're going through. And I know some of you are going through some really difficult times these days. You're not alone. Cry out to God. He's there for you. And I love the way Tamara just talked about that in her testimony. And I love the opportunity she has now to reach out to others who are in need. And I encourage you to be asking God, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to serve? Maybe it's to come alongside Tamara and help her. Maybe it's God has a special ministry for you and mine too, of how you can reach out during these difficult days to bring joy and encouragement. Like Tamara talked about, there were individuals who just showed up and showed kindness to her. Maybe for those individuals, it wasn't a big deal, but for her, it was a big deal. She remembers it today. And you could be that kind of person in someone's life. So seek the Lord, say, God, what would you have for me today? And let's live for him. Guys, proud of you. Hope you have a fantastic week. Looking forward this weekend. We're starting a brand new series called House Rules. And we're looking at just how we communicate and live together as families, especially in these hard days when we're stuck together all the time. And our first one we're going to be talking about is sacrifice, that a big part of relationships being together is sacrifice. And Jim and Teresa will be co-teaching this weekend. So looking forward to that. Hope you have a great week. God bless you. We'll see you on Sunday.